It's hard to immediately tell the story of somebody that has meant so much to you. And I think you go on, when somebody means so much to you, you'll tell their story for the rest of your life and they'll be part of your story. And it's sometimes very hard to separate, their perspective from yours. But I wanted to tell the story of my wife's battle with breast cancer. In some ways, it wasn't a battle. She kind of just ignored it, or she just got on with life so amazingly fully, almost in complete denial of the seriousness. Although I think she knew in the back of her mind how serious it was right from the very beginning, right from day one. But she just kind of refused to let it get on top of her. She was incredibly brave, or she just figured out a way just to get on and make the most of it. She discovered her breast cancer, and I discovered it one morning on a Sunday morning, as husbands sometimes do. And it just felt a bit odd, and it was a tiny little thing. It was 1 centimetre. And I said, Teen, that feels a bit odd. Just hoping it would be thyroadenoma or a little benign something or other. But it was worrying, and just the next day, I think it was pretty much on the Monday, we got an ultrasound organised, and then you get that news at work, doesn't look quite right, they're going to do a biopsy. Mammogram doesn't look quite right, looks suspicious. Those words, she just said, okay, we'll just get on to the next step, just go through the next step. And she did. I picked out the best breast surgeon that I knew, and she had a lumpectomy, and in those days they just did an axillary clearance, which is a pretty morbid operation, and as it turns out it was complicated and a bit morbid for her in terms of she got an infection in the wound, and she was 39 when she was diagnosed. This was 18 years ago, and she was just about to have her 40th birthday. A couple of months later, she'd started chemotherapy. She was lined up for radiation treatment. She was on tamoxifen, and the chemo was starting to kick in. I think she had a second dose, and then we went up together to a place called Port Douglas, which is a beautiful holiday resort in Queensland. And she's starting to lose a little bit of hair here and there. She's a beautiful woman. She had beautiful blonde hair. And we were in the hotel room in Port Douglas, and she said, Rich, all my hair's coming out. And like instantly she went from this kind of gorgeous looking person to just bald patches. It was like such an incredible body image change, and so devastating. And then she was turning 40, and then we go out to dinner, and she starts getting fevers and chills, and that's when the abscess under the arm kind of kicked in, and we had to get back and had to be drained down in Sydney. And so that wasn't a great start. The pathology came back, small tumour, not a horrible grade, but her negative. She had the estrogen progesterone receptors positive, which was good. All these things relate to what can be offered in terms of treatment. And she went through weeks and weeks of very tough chemo, and she had incredible support from her family and friends, and people were just so generous and so amazing. And you know, she was very well loved, so she got a lot of support, and she deserved every bit of it. It was a very tough time, but then she came through that, and she's normal, you know. And you think, okay, we're through it. We've had all the big treatment. We're on the home stretch now. We just got to get out to 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. 5 years, wow, nothing, no problem. And then at 7 years, boom, a recurrence in the breast itself. And that's kind of blows you away. And then, you know, that had huge consequences, because one, it was a recurrence, but two, so this bloody cancer hadn't kind of gone. It was back threatening us in her mid-40s. But she was well, and she went to have a full mastectomy, and that was tough, really tough for her, because for about 2 years it really changed her body image incredibly. It was really hard because she didn't get an immediate reconstruction. These days I think they do that a bit more, you know, readily. But she eventually did have a reconstruction, maybe about 2 years after that. And I think the recurrence coincided with her stopping her tamoxifen. And these days they would actually continue tamoxifen for 10 years and even more, because it has been shown to lower recurrence. So anyway, she had some new hormone type treatments, and didn't have more chemo at that stage. And then went through this huge thing where they took her muscle from her tummy and skin from her tummy. She didn't have a lot to spare, and reconstructed her breast, which was just an incredibly courageous thing to go through. She was in intensive care after that for a day, and it was a big deal. And that helped her psychologically a lot. Just to be able to wear dresses and look normal, and it was a really positive thing for her. And then going forward around about another 3 years, and then there was metastatic disease. So we're looking 10, 11, 12 years after the initial diagnosis, and she was getting a bit short of breath, and eventually had a CAT scan of her lungs, and there was metastatic disease. And that prompted a whole bunch of treatment to cut out all the estrogen. So she had an removal of her ovaries to cut out the stimulus to the breast cancer, which is responsive to the estrogen receptors and estrogen in the system. And she was super healthy, and she was just got on with life, and she just lived it to the full, and travelled, and just brought up and loved her kids and me and all her friends and family, and just basically got on with it, beat it. It was under control, going. And then there was metastatic recurrence of the breast cancer in the bones. She beat it. She had 4 further changes of treatment, and some of the treatments created huge issues with symptoms. Neuropathy, losing sort of like sensitivity in the hands, or hypersensitivity. That was very tough. One of the symptoms of the chemo was to block off her eye drainage, her tears, so she would tear onto her face. And she just braved it out, just kept cracking on. And then about 3 years ago, she got it in the liver, and she beat that. That was under control for like 2 years, 2.5 years. And she just led a normal life. She just didn't want to know about it. She paid attention to her doctor, who was just amazing. Professor Fran Boyle, one of the most incredible doctors you'll ever come across. And we just explored every possible way to get around, and we tried really new drugs. And she did really well for long periods of time. And it wasn't like she was sick. She just wasn't sick. On January 15, we went and danced to Elton John up in the Hunter Valley. She wasn't well, but she was just getting on with life. And then 3 days later, she was so sick and admitted to hospital, and then she passed away a month after that, on February 19. And we all miss her so incredibly. She's just such a wonderful girl. Yeah, I think I'll be telling her various parts of her story for a long time to come. She's a beautiful person. But I don't know if it'll help anyone. It's a bit of a sad story, really, but in a way, it was full of hope and full of life. And I just want to emphasize just how much she just cracked on with life, which is, despite facing those sort of life and death issues with the disease. And she just told her to bugger off, basically.